Some say the world will end in fire, and some say in ice. And some say the universe will end in a big crunch, and some say in a big freeze. But do we actually have a hope of figuring out which one and be precise? Well, yes, us astrophysicists can tackle this question, but it turns out the answer might not be the obvious one like we first thought. Now, crucially, the future of the universe depends on the knife-point balance between how much stuff there is in the universe, all being attracted together by gravity on this side, versus how much energy is being put into the expansion of the universe, which is driving everything apart. If we can figure that out, then us humans do have a hope of figuring out how and when the universe might end. So in this video, we're going to dive into all of the nitty-gritty scientific details on the big rip, big crunch, big freeze, big bounce, and which one of those is favored by dark energy, and of course what the latest research is telling us, which is changing everything we thought we knew. But before we get to the end, we have to start with the beginning, with the Big Bang theory that says the universe started in a hot, dense state before it started to expand 13.7 billion years ago and has been expanding ever since. But when we think about the end of the universe, we have to think about what would happen in the future if we ran our models forward between that balance of the rate of expansion of the universe and all the stuff that's in the universe, from the stars and the gas and the dust and the planets and the dark matter. And what you can do is you can work out what would be the critical density of all the matter in the universe to perfectly balance the expansion of the universe. Now, you need a lot of maths to do that. You use Einstein's theory of general relativity to model an expanding universe, and out pops this equation. It's known as the Friedmann equation, named after Alexander Friedmann, who was the first to derive it in 1922. So there's a couple of different terms here, but you can see there's the density of all the stuff in the universe that's represented by the Greek letter rho, and you can see the expansion rate of the universe represented by the letter h. Now, in the simplest case, to balance these two things, you end up with this equation that only depends on the density and the expansion rate. And if you want to plug in some numbers, it comes out at around about 5 or 6 hydrogen atoms worth of stuff per cubic meter. That's what we think is the magic number to balance these two things. So working out what's going to happen in the future of the universe, we only have to measure two things. First, the rate of expansion of the universe, which we can do from how fast galaxies appear to be moving away from us, and measure how much stuff there is in the universe and figure out, is that more or less than this magic number, this critical density. Now, in that Goldilocks just so scenario, when the two balance each other perfectly, the expansion eventually slows and the universe reaches a certain size until it's in perfect equilibrium, a perfect balance. But if there's more stuff in the universe than the critical density, gravity will eventually win the tug of war against the expansion, and it'll be like watching the Big Bang, but in reverse, with everything reeled back down to that hot, dense state that we started with in what's been dubbed the Big Crunch. There are also people that have speculated that that could lead to cycles of the Big Bang, the Big Crunch, the Big Bang, the Big Crunch in what's become known as the Big Bounce. Or if there's less stuff in the universe than the critical density, gravity will lose against the expansion, and the universe expands forever to infinity until all the energy and the matter in the universe is just spread out so much
butter scraped over too much bread
that the average energy or temperature of the universe plummets and approaches absolute zero in what's known as the Big Freeze. And an extreme version of that is when the expansion rate itself also keeps increasing to such a point where it can actually tear apart structures like galaxies in what's become known as the Big Rip. Now, if that sounds terrifying, don't worry, because we are talking about billions of years in the future here. But the Big Freeze has been what we thought was the most likely explanation for how the universe would end for the past 25 years, all because of the discovery of dark energy. So a bit of history first. In the 1920s, it was Edwin Hubble that first noticed that galaxies further away from us appear to be moving away from us faster than those close by. That was eventually interpreted as not the galaxies themselves moving, but the space in between us and those galaxies expanding, i.e. the universe was expanding. And it also led to the development of the Big Bang Theory for how the universe has evolved. That took decades of endless scientific debate though, and it wasn't until 1964 when the cosmic microwave background was discovered, which is an echo of light from the early universe which supports the idea of the Big Bang Theory, that the Big Bang Theory became widely accepted. If you want to know more about that, I covered it in my Great Debate series a few years ago. But it meant that by the 90s, we had this picture of the universe that had evolved through the Big Bang Theory at a constant expansion rate. But then, in 1998, recent collaborators published what would become their Nobel Prize-winning study, which showed that as they looked at galaxies with even faster apparent speeds away from us, the galaxies were further away than you'd expect by a factor of around 10 to 15%. That was eventually interpreted as the space between the galaxies had expanded more than you'd expect from a constant expansion rate, i.e. the universe was accelerating. And that result didn't stand alone. As we went through the 2000s, more results in support of that started to pour in as we got more detailed measurements of the cosmic microwave background, and as we did big galaxy surveys to map out the large-scale clustering of galaxies. All of that pointed towards an expansion rate that was constantly accelerating. But to do that, you need more energy in the universe, something that was eventually dubbed dark energy. And it turns out there's more dark energy than all the normal and dark matter combined. Which means, if we go back to the Friedmann equation for an expanding universe, dark energy is now added in with this term represented by a capital Greek letter lambda. And because it dominates over the amount of matter in the universe, it's now that dark energy term that dominates what the expansion rate of the universe actually does, what dominates what H here in this equation does. And what it means is that in a constantly accelerating, expanding universe, the only option for what happens in the future of the universe is that the expansion continues forever, and the energy and matter of the universe gets so spread out.
Butter scraped over too much bread.
And the universe ends in a big freeze. You might also have heard this referred to as the inevitable heat death of the universe. But is it inevitable? Because in the past 2 years, there's been some new research published that has changed everything we thought we knew about the end of the universe. Specifically, results from the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument, or DESI, which is an instrument working on the Nicholas U. Mayall telescope at Kitt Peak in Arizona. It is surveying the positions and the apparent speed away from us of tens of millions of galaxies, making a 3D map of the universe. Now, thankfully, because light takes time to travel to us, we see those galaxies as they were and in the positions that they were in billions of years ago, so that when we make our 3D map, we essentially get a slice of that map at every epoch in the universe's history. And with that, we can trace how the expansion rate changes over time and check whether the universe really is expanding at a constant acceleration rate. If we were going to make an analogy here, it would be if the universe has its foot on the accelerator pedal, but it's not changing how hard it's pushing down on that pedal. It's keeping it in a fixed position. So back in April 2024, we got the first data release from DESI with the first small chunk of that 3D map that it made from its first few years of observations. And it was here that we got our first hints that the universe might not be constantly accelerating its expansion rate. Instead, that acceleration seems to be changing with time. If we go back to our analogy from before, it's pressing on the accelerator pedal, but it is changing how hard it's pushing down. The technical physics term for that is jerking, because it represents that really jerky motion you get, like in a car, for example, when someone very quickly changes the acceleration rate and you slam forward or backwards. That jerky motion is where that term comes from. And what DESI found was that the acceleration rate of the universe is slowing down. So what does that mean for how the universe will end? Will we still get a big freeze like we originally thought? Well, no, it doesn't look like we will. For example, Gyalamis and collaborators worked through a few different ways of applying the maths for an expanding universe with a changing acceleration rate, and find that a big crunch is the most likely scenario. Similarly, Liu and collaborators agree when they work through the maths for their model of changing dark energy, they find the universe ends in a big crunch. And what's more, they can calculate when that will happen. They calculate a lifetime of the universe of 33 billion years, meaning the universe ends in around 19 billion years' time. So it's not quite middle-aged just yet. Here's another one from Van der Vesterhuizen and collaborators favouring the big crunch. And another one from Tada and Terada favouring the big crunch. And oh look, another one from Pericola and collaborators just published online this month that favours, you guessed it, the big crunch. I managed to find one paper using the DESI results that didn't favour the big crunch, and that was this one from Wang, published online last year, which when they run the maths matching to the DESI data, supports the idea of a big stall, a fate in which the universe ends up dominated by dark matter and not dark energy, and the expansion rate fully stops. But it's not reeled back in a big crunch, it just stays at a fixed size. Either way, whether big crunch or big stall, on this cutting edge of astrophysics research, it doesn't look like the big freeze is the most likely option for how the universe will end anymore. The heat death of the universe might not be so inevitable. But of course, all of this is just based off DESI's early release results. And so now the entire astrophysics community is on tenterhooks, waiting for those 5-year full survey results and map to be published to see if they confirm this idea of a decelerating, expanding universe and the idea of a big crunch. And I'll be covering them on my channel as soon as they're published, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out on that. And of course, the conclusion of what's going to happen to the end of the universe, the end of the world as we know it.
It's the end of the world as we know it.
Before we get to the bloopers, if you're going to have an existential crisis about the end of the universe, you might as well be comfy while you do it. Because if you've watched my videos before, you've heard me talk about the hip issues that I have and the pain that I get from sitting down for too long. That's why I love FlexiSpot's electronic height adjustable desk so that I can switch between sitting and standing. But a sit-stand desk only solves half the problem. The other half is what I'm sitting on. Now this might come as a shock to all of you, but I am short, so I have a real trouble with most desk chairs because the seat, it's just too deep. I have to like scooch forwards to get that like perfect 90-degree sitting position that you really want. But then I don't have any back support, and when I do scooch back, my legs all weirdly dangle, and this is why I end up with hip pain, back pain, and probably it's the root of all my problems. So FlexiSpot sent me their C7 Max chair to try, and I am in love. It's just so customizable. So I've got the seat depth right for me. I've pulled the back forward. I can also adjust the back height and this little headrest height as well, and I can adjust the recline. And you can adjust these little armrests like 360 degrees, which is incredible. They're almost too customizable because they've become like little fidget spinners for me. I just can't stop playing with them. The C7 Max has got a 10-year warranty and a 30-day free return, so there's no risk in trying it. Or if you've got a more limited budget, check out their C5 chair or the newly released C7 Morpher, which has an upgrade to the lumbar support and upper backrest. Plus, FlexiSpot are having a sale at the minute for their 10-year anniversary with up to 65% off. You can also save $50 off a C7 Max chair with the code C750. I'll pop that in the video description down below. A big thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. Check out their sale, see if you can upgrade your office or gaming space. But now, roll those bloopers. A big crunch, and some say in a big freeze. But do we actually have a hope of figuring out which one and be precise? I'm speaking in rhyme.
I'm speaking in rhyme! Ah!
So, FlexiSpot's the plant. Let's put that back. I'm so sorry, Scotty. My plant's named Scotty Scheffler after the golfer. I can't remember why. The name of the plant was Scheffler adjacent. Don't ask me. Anyway, it's the end of the world as we know it. It's the end of the world as we know it, and I feel alarmed. That's just what goes through my head when I think about big crunch and big freeze. It's just like I'm reading research papers and it's just there like...